Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the TRN VX. So first I just want to thank the AK Audio Store on AliExpress for shipping this out to me. I bought it not too long after it came out. Took a few weeks to get here. Been playing with it for a week, and so I do want to thank those guys for shipping that out as soon as possible, and check them out. I'll give you a link. They do have, as I said, I think in my last video, there's a coupon, $15 off, so it's about $70 listing, $15 off, and if you actually message them, good chance you'll get it down for another $2 less to about $53. So don't let the $70 scare you off. So here's the VX, and I think as I talked about in the open box, there was lots of initial reviews that had some treble super hot, treble unlistenable, lots of variations on too much treble. So I do want to talk about what I have it set up and what I did. So first you can see this isn't the stock cable. This is a Yin 16 core QDC, because that's what this uses, QDC connectors. Let's see if we could see that a little closer. So these are the rounded QDC, not the square blonde style. Tips are the KZ star tips because I like bass, and after the too much treble, light bass was probably the second common initial review. So the tips alone will actually get you quite a bit of bass compared to the stock tips. And lastly, I am definitely doing the tape mod over the front vent. I think it does wonders for the VX. If you have any question on the bass, I would definitely give this one a shot. So generally people were saying it's light bass, not enough bass. My issue was it's tight and fast, and we sort of get into this listening mode of it's going by so fast. There's not enough bass persistence. The decay is so quick that you're just kind of missing the bass. It feels like it's light bass, feels like it's not there. So for me, that's pretty much where that tape mod comes into play, is there's just a lot more. The decay, I mean, I'm sure it doesn't slow the decay, but there's just a lot more kind of sub bass hanging around. It's more persistent. It's more noticeable. You're no longer thinking, this is kind of a light bass, I wish I could turn it up. For me, it kind of brought it into balance with everything else, that there's just plenty of bass there to make everything sound as good as it should. And once I put the tape on there, I never actually took it off. So I would definitely, you almost have to use tips. Cable is more optional, and definitely tape mod if you want to kind of bring back the treble a little bit and bring the bass in. Those are the two things that really went really far to getting this into the mode of kind of where these second round of reviews were at, where it sounds, really good, as opposed to, it's unlistenable. So that was my thing on the tape mod. So I'm not going to spend too much on the general, these are magnesium alloy shells, QDC connector, all that junk, all the marketing stuff that you could read on the listing on AliExpress. But I do want to address, some of the CCA CA16 differences sort of right away, because I think that's where most people are really struggling with, because not enough people had both of them. There were probably more reviews of the VX than the CA16 at this point in time. But so I do want to kind of march through some general characteristics before we jump in. So the bass, like I said, it's really tight, really fast. Tips will bring you a lot more bass. Tape mod, even more bass. So out of the box, probably a little light. After configuring it properly, you just end up with some really nice quality, tight, fast bass. Really nice. So the mids are, not the star of the show, because that's the treble, obviously, but the mids have this clarity and transparency that you don't even find that on the CCA. It's I think it's really unique to the VX, and it's the thing that really kind of blew me away. Then the treble is the star of the show. It's just big and powerful, and where the CCA stopped a little short, of, if my line was right here where I wanted it to be, CCA was probably a little to the left of it, and the VX is probably a little to the right of it for some people. But like I said, tape mod, I think, brings down that a little bit less. I think the treble is knocked down 1 or 2 decibels is what I would say. I didn't touch the EQ. I didn't do the other tape mod, which for the micropore tape. As soon as I got the tape mod on there, everything kind of worked for me, so I kept it in that configuration. So first, considering the CA16, you have this light and this dark comparison. Someone, I think, actually asked me if the CA16 was dark, and my initial reaction was no, it's actually not. The treble's a little lighter than it should be, but overall the bass doesn't really overpower the mids. It doesn't have that much of a dark signature until you listen to it next to something that's really bright. And then there's kind of a clear one is a lot darker than the other one, but it's more of this is maybe too bright for some people. This one is not going to be, I doubt it's going to be too dark for anyone. But if you're going to A/B them and say, this one's definitely going to come out bright, this one is going to sound a little darker relative to each other. So that's definitely the first thing you would notice. So the vocals are definitely the second thing you'll notice. So the CA16 had some weirdness with some recessed vocals, but overall really nice. The VX is kind of on a next level, and that's really why I said it's my better V90, because that was my issue with the V90, where the vocals were a bit recessed, not as forward as the ZSX, not as good as the Blonde. For me, it was the weakest point. And then to listen to the VX and how good the vocals are, it's kind of at a next level of being forward and intimate and transparent. And, if that's really your thing, you should probably look at the VX. There's nothing wrong with the CA16, but, they're very, very good on the VX, and you could actually just tell by the songs that you can kind of see there that it's heavily female vocal oriented. So resolution is another thing that I talked about with the CA16, and it's more of the CA16 pops. Some of the notes, they're almost vivid. They have a lot of texture to them. It's sort of like turning your TV on that vivid setting, and you walk by and it immediately grabs your attention. That's what the CA16 did. So both are, definitely a step in a, much better resolution. But on the VX, you notice it more as in a natural resolution. It's not vivid. You're just generally hearing a very natural sound at a very high resolution, as opposed to popping out in vivid mode like it does on the CA16. And like I said on that review, things just pop, whereas in here you're listening to it and it's more of a realism as opposed to a vivid mode. And it's both have a lot of resolution compared to their previous models. I mean, I think this one is way above the V90 in resolution, and the same thing with the CA16. So very noticeable increase in resolution, just presents itself in 2 different ways. So Soundstage, one of those things that I talked about forever on the CA16. I love that soundstage that goes wide and high and some depth to it. It's just really big, and instruments get split out across this huge space. The VX is most definitely a kind of a linear side-to-side wide soundstage. Again, it kind of kills the V90 on the soundstage, because that was another one of my issues with the V90. The VX just does it right. It's just a kind of a wide, linear. Vocals are very centered, but they're big. They're not kind of recessed. When you kind of image this soundstage, it's this wide, but the vocals are taking up almost 2/3 of it. It's just a very big centered voice. And again, that will turn some people on, and some people will say it's a bit unnatural, but if you're a vocal fan, it's all there and it's beautiful. So let's talk about some of the songs. And so these are sort of, Adele's Love Song is one that I sort of hit on the sweet spot of the VX right away. And as soon as you hear it, it'll blow you away, because On a lot of, not even the CCA 16, but on some of the other IAMs like the V90 or even the ZSX or the Blonde, it always sounded like a B-side to me. It was never really Adele's voice as full and as rich as it should be. And then you hear it on the VX, and, it starts off with the guitars, and you kind of first get a whiff of, this natural sound on the guitars because there's a whole lot of treble there. And then you're also got my bass boosted with the tape mod, so now you're getting, both sides of that guitar, and it just sounds more natural to me. Maybe it's unnatural to some people, but yeah, for me it hits that right balance of the sharp attack, full treble, and then some of the lower notes towards the mids and the lows. I think it hits that right balance where you can almost always hear both sides of it, which is great. So it starts off with those guitars, and then she starts singing, and you'll immediately notice how big her voice is in the soundstage, and how close it sounds, how intimate and transparent and clear. It's almost every mid adjective that you could throw out there. The VX pulls it off, and it's kind of shocking to me how good it is. And I know some people are going to say it's unnatural because it's so forward and so close. It almost sounds like she's singing, about an inch in front of your ears. But, if that's your thing and it's my thing, it really kind of blew me away. So difference between this and the CA16 on that song, the soundstage is actually better on the CA16. But her voice isn't as good compared to the VX. So I would definitely give the VX the edge on that one. So Tracy Chapman's Give Me One Reason is almost the same as Love Song. It basically starts off with guitars, and then she starts singing, and you end up with this amazing, high-resolution, transparent, clear, beautiful, rich voice. And the VX just absolutely nails that one. And if they didn't tune the VX, on a bunch of these female vocal strong songs, I could be wrong, but, as soon as you flip one on, it seems like there's a switch in here that says, this is exactly what I was made to do. And, yeah, the female vocals, almost all of them kind of blew me away. And Give Me One Reason is just a classic song. So it starts off the same amazing guitars, but as the band comes in, you get kind of a hint of the drums, that tight, fast, bass drum actually comes on. And that was kind of your first hint of what this thing can actually really do on the bass side. And it's really more of a quality over quantity. It's not as boomy as the CA16. It's just kind of this tight, fast, controlled, what a lot of people look for in a bass. And I think they kind of pulled it off, and especially adjusted with the tips and the tape mod, and then you're kind of right in the zone. So that's those two. So Underworld, Caliban's Dream. So the VX or the CA16, I love the soundstage, but the treble was kind of my weakness on that guy. So now that you have this full extended, powerful treble, you should definitely try some orchestral pieces. And Underworld's Caliban's Dream was actually from the Olympics. It was one of the opening songs, and it's as big and powerful as you wanted anything to be. And it starts off with the chorus, and you kind of get your first hint of just doing a wide soundstage on the VX with the chorus to the sides, and then it fills in. There's lots of nice mid sounds. It's Underworld, so they're not quite instruments, they're sounds. But as soon as that male vocal right in the middle comes in, then you kind of get the full experience of the VX, how wide it is, how great the vocals are, and then the strings come in and all the other instruments come in, and then there's another layer of vocals above the main vocalist. And so yeah, I think for orchestral, classical, I think this one with that super strong treble, it just hits that sweet spot as well. So that's kind of the second grouping that I would call that. Those guys are going to be really happy as well. So next one, so LA Philharmonic's Jurassic Park theme, is sort of the same idea, except that you could actually feel the soundstage unfold, because it starts off almost narrow in front. The first opening notes are kind of like dead set right in front of you. And as the song kind of reveals itself, it gets wider and wider, and then you get a real feel for the imaging from side to side. So whereas, this was kind of a huge soundstage, this is almost a linear width. And so as instruments are populated inside the song, they actually you can feel this, almost seamless, continuous soundstage, and it's really great. And then you get the treble, and everything is soaring. The strings are going where the strings should go. And I'm going to say it again, but I think the tape mod kind of holds those back a little bit. They're a little more restrained. So I never really went to reach for the EQ after I did the tape mod. And so a song like that, Jurassic Park, it soars as high as it should. And when you compare it to the VX, with this almost darker signature, it's more of the horns. So you feel the VX kind of from below, and you feel the VX almost from above in the treble range. And it's just kind of a slight variation on the same song, but it'll kind of give you a better idea of, what kind of music do you listen to. This is definitely a boomier, bassier sound, and this is more for, soaring strings, all those treble-centric. But, when you go side by side, they're not all that different. It's just that, certain parts of certain songs are going to soar way higher than they do on the CA16. So it's hard to encapsulate the differences between the two, because A and B, they're not all that far apart until you get to, specifically the treble parts, and then there's a real difference. So Queen's Another One Bites the Dust is yet another difference. So the CA16, not quite as sharp as I wanted it to be. The VX, if you read some of those initial reviews, it had this biting edge, and so after you burn it in, it's not quite, nearly that biting, not that hard edge anymore. It definitely loosens up, softens up a little bit. But when you hear the attack on Another One Bites the Dust, because it's not sparse, but his voice is so sharp, and that snare drum is so sharp, the two just play together perfectly on the VX. And probably my favorite version of that song, other than maybe the KB Ear Diamond, which had this kind of the same similar mids that have been leaned out a little bit, definitely going for a more clarity and transparency. But to hear his voice and those drums so transparent and so clear, it's kind of another step above the Diamond in that respect on that song as well. And so I'll just kind of wrap it up with, as I said, this strong female vocal is what this thing feels like it was designed to do, and Diana Krall's body and soul. So, one, her voice, the way it was recorded, it's super transparent, recorded very well anyway. So, but to hear it in like full resolution, just her voice alone, that intimate, transparent, clear, it's beautiful. But then listen to the piano. So listen to, it's probably about 3 notes in when it hits that sharper note, and you kind of get a sense for it's not only the resolution that's been increased, but there's a real realism to it that you kind of transition from, hey, that sounds really good, to that sounds exactly like if I was standing, 6 inches from that piano. It's really, really close. And so these two sort of hit that realism pretty well. And I think at this price point, I'm not sure anything else has ever really come that close. And that song in particular, with that piano and her voice, it all just soundstage, all this kind of comes together, and it's just pretty amazing. So that's my take on the TRN VX. Out of the box, I wouldn't necessarily stick it in my ears. New tips, new cable, tape mod, please give all that a shot if you find yourself picking one up. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.